welcome to the first video of 1,000 movies before you die.
Excellent.
I'm Nathan. I'm joined by my great buddy Toby, and today we're here to talk about White Heat, the classic James Cagney uh,
Wild ride, I would call it.
wild ride from 1949, I believe.
Yeah, like if you think about it, it's a train heist, right? It's a prison break. It's what is that heist at the end there? They're breaking into a
The-
refinery or something,
no, they're
right?
sneaking in the truck. They've got the
Yeah, it's like
gas,
a Trojan horse
the
concept they've
Trojan
got
horse.
going,
Yes,
right?
trying to.
Which he makes a
Yeah,
point of explaining, which I thought was funny.
yeah,
I guess
at
back
great
then
length.
that wasn't a very known concept, the Trojan horse. But then it's also like this psychodrama, right? Ma and him, it's really
Yeah,
twisted. Like she's not in it for the gains or anything. Like she just wants to help him. So she's sort of her motivations there are kind of good, but it all goes awry. And then I was surprised on this viewing. Like it's a really sort of intricate police procedural where they're really going into the triangulation, right? You got that car ABC when they're following Ma,
yeah,
and it sort of flips through all these things, and
yeah,
and then it's got one of the best endings that I
yeah.
mean, I guess it says something for maybe not taking the shot in the refinery. He's like, only
Yes,
take it if
yes.
you got a clear shot. It's like, oh, okay. So those
Well, I
cops
will
should have
say
probably
that
been
when I
arrested.
watched it, because I hadn't seen it before, and I actually had no, I knew of it. I knew it was a classic, but I didn't know anything about the story. To me, it played out like it was a biography of one of the a gangster from the 30s or
Yeah,
something. I don't know if it is, but it's just the way it was written, as you said, with all these different elements. It just felt like they were trying to recreate uh, like some historical events that didn't maybe did or didn't happen. I don't know, but that's how it
yeah. It could
read
almost
to
be
me.
like a conglomerate of things, right? Like
Yeah,
of several people put into one guy.
yeah,
It's also it's a change at the time when it's around the sort of the communist scare. So
yeah,
that's one of the reasons he's nuts, is because like you couldn't have it criminality because of his social conditions anymore, right? So they went, okay, we have to have new motivations. We can't be criticizing society. So that's one of the reasons they decided to make his motivation just pure insanity, right? Actually, it's not insanity. He has some sort of an affliction, and I'm not sure if it's migraines or if it's some sort of a seizures that he's having, right? Like they explain it that he basically faked it until he had the condition, right? It's
yeah,
like he to get attention from his family, away from his family, from his mother, and
yes,
then it stuck. But then they also mentioned that his dad had some. He's crazy like his dad, they say. So
yeah,
it's never really clear what he has, but it at times it definitely looks like he's got migraines or something. But the way he characterized it is pretty amazing. Like he
yeah.
really lets out a wail, that's sort of blood curdling, especially that scene in the prison, right, where he gets carried out. Like that's really incredible.
Yeah. Oh, as an actor, he dominates that film for sure.
Oh yeah,
Although the
exactly.
headaches thing never really went anywhere, I figured it would play into something later, and it never really did.
Yeah,
Just
no,
kind of
it's
happened a
it's
couple times,
it's
and
almost just sort of an extra insanity, right? Like he's kind of vicious. Like he takes real pleasure in like when he shoots Big Ed and he like
yeah,
kicks him down the stairs, and then he like he's gleefully showing it to what's her name, Verna,
yeah,
and like he's proud of this, right? And
yeah,
he like when he slaps her around or whatever, he's loving it.
yeah, yeah.
And he's a real yeah. There's not much redeemable about
Yeah,
him.
yeah. He's a very well developed character, but
Yes,
it was
yeah,
that's why I feel like it was almost like they were trying to recreate a historical thing because the headaches were there, but they didn't actually mean anything in terms of the ending, or they didn't lead to a foreshadow anything towards the end. There was a lot of elements, like even his mom. was a character, but she died off screen. Like it's like
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Like,
odd,
yeah,
very odd. So there was some interesting choices story-wise that kind of I found a bit confusing in a way. But it was compelling throughout, that's for sure.
yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that happens. You know,
Yes.
it's all squeezed in, and I don't think it's. Well, actually, there is some time that passes because he sort of turns himself in for another crime, right?
Yes.
And so he's in prison for a while. And then you get Edmund O'Brien's character, who sort of plays a double life, right? Where he
Yeah.
is basically a professional prisoner as a cop, right? He's got to be in prison all the time,
Yeah.
and ingratiates himself with Cody Jarrett, and basically goes on the prison break, right? Tries to
Yeah.
sort of steer that so it's less violent, and then it all sort of goes wrong, and then he finds himself constantly trying to sort of alert the cops, which is pretty. I like that aspect, you know, where
Yeah.
he's that element I really liked, where he's he's sort of playing both sides, and I starts to feel some sympathy for Cody Jarrett, but he also like doesn't really like anyone, but he ends up trusting this one guy that he really shouldn't have trusted.
Yeah.
And I mean, the cops, they're made, yeah, like everything seems to work for them, right? So there's no, I don't remember any sort of bad. It's really sort of a
Well, they
uh,
try and do the oscillator, and then it doesn't end up panning out, right? So they're like, "All right, guys, take it off. You can't win them all." Like that's what I mean. What you're saying is like a police procedural in parts, or it's the perspectives are kind of all over the place,
yes, yeah,
in that
yeah.
sense. So,
Like
so
whenever
what
the
would,
cops, the procedural, it did sort of, yeah, it sort of, it really takes you in a completely different tangent, right?
yeah,
You're all of a sudden in a different movie. He's like violently, doing something. He kicks, Virginia May off the chair, right? And is like, just this insane person, and then it flips to this like clean procedural where
yeah,
they're like triangulation lines, and they're giving this clean analysis of everything. And it
yeah,
goes back. It's almost this, I guess, juxtaposition of these two sort of lifestyles, I guess, right? And the
yeah,
cops seem pretty straight laced, right? Well, you know, Edmund O'Brien's character, I guess, is the difference there, right?
yes,
He's the only cop that's kind of humanized. The rest are all pretty um yeah, they're just pretty plastic characters,
yes, yeah,
the police.
yeah. They are. They're all straight ahead do-gooders. There's no
It's almost
moral
like the
ambiguity there.
FBI was like gave like looked at the script and went, interjected some I don't know, sort of feel good propaganda
Yeah,
about the police side of things, right? Because
yeah,
normally there's some corruption or something sprinkled in there, but there really isn't in this one.
no, no.
Um, but yeah, like I watched his next film, which is I can't remember what it's called now. Um,
Public
it's a,
Enemy.
no, that
Oh,
that
that was
was
an
one of his
earlier one.
earlier one. That one's really good because that one is it's before the Hays Code. So when I watched it, like it really is different. Like it's clearly implied that this couple has sex, right? It's even talked about, and at first I was like, that's really strange, and I was like, oh, that's before the code, right? And then there's this
Oh,
abrupt change. Um, man, what is the name of that film? Anyway, it's really has no redeeming qualities in this one, right? He breaks out of prison, he's just
yeah,
like kills people,
yeah,
but he's still somehow likable just because of the way he plays him, right? Like he plays him
yeah.
with a glint in his eye. And I was thinking, like, there's nothing redeemable about that character at all.
No,
But
no.
he's likable. And in this one, though, I don't think he's likable, but he's certainly compelling. And
Do you mean in White Heat?
yes, in White
Yeah,
Heat.
yeah.
Um, sorry, I'm
Well,
gonna look it
it's
up
funny
because
because
it's
you're
it's
trying to
bugging me
think
that
of
I
who to
can't.
cheer for,
Yes,
because
exactly.
in White Heat, like,
There's really no one.
obviously he's a
Oh, maybe Edmund
terrible,
O'Brien. That might be the only guy to cheer for, I guess. But
yeah,
other than that, yeah.
but you don't get to know him all that well. Like I guess he's of the policemen, he's the most developed, but he's I felt he was more of like a narrative tool than anything, else. Really, the key centerpiece is James Cagney. So well, what do you think? Maybe we can do kind of an upside downside kind of idea here. What did you like best about White Heat?
I think I like just the frenetic pace of it and the constant switching of, like, I liked all that stuff crammed in.
Yeah,
I did like that. And I really like the relationship angle between him and his mother,
yeah.
and sort of that element of it. Yeah, I like the roller coaster ride, and
It
I
is.
did have to watch it a second time to really get everything. Like, it can get a bit, like, I was like, okay, why did he end up in that other prison? Like, his plan there, right? To sort of,
Yeah,
I had to watch it a second time because it didn't really click. So it it's fairly complex, which I liked,
yeah,
and I like him all the way through. Like,
yes.
especially the thing that I think drew me to this movie was the ending. It was some sort of top 10 endings,
Yeah, it's
and I was like,
definitely
oh yeah, White Heat.
spectacular.
And I watched it again, and it's like, I mean, that's the greatest ending, of a black and white film that I can think of. But when you think about it, it's insanity. Like, those cops, they should all be arrested, never mind fired. I mean, they're shooting their guns off. It's like the whole city. It's an amazingly, it's a huge man-made disaster that
Yeah.
basically, it's that's all on the cops. Like,
Yes.
they chase him in there, and then they just start shooting, which is, so that part is a bit nuts. But it sets up that ending, which is great. He's on
Yes.
top of the world,
Yeah.
and he's joining Ma, and he's made it. And
Yeah.
it's a glorious ending for sort of a two-bit. Yeah, sort of in his ending, he achieves top of the world,
Yeah.
right? But it's pretty dubious, but
Yes.
it's it's damn spectacular.
Yeah.
And I think Ma would have been proud.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think she would have been proud. You know.
I think for me, I think the it James Cagney is the best part of that film. If you don't have him in that role, if you don't have a strong, you know, actor that can pull off that role,
Oh
it
yeah,
would have been very
and it would have just been
muddled.
confusing, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, getting to that over the top. Like, apparently that prison scene, the I think they use real prisoners where
Yeah.
he freaks out, and most of them had no idea that he was going to go that nuts. So a lot of their reactions are like, they're kind of like shocked into silence, right? And a lot of that is real. And there's that scene where it's really quiet, and he's sort of wailing in this almost pathetic way, right?
Yeah.
And apparently he went to like an insane asylum and sort of researched
Yeah.
crazy people, right? And he came up with it, and it's actually pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Often back in the day, over the top, would I mean, it's way over the top by today's standards, but that works, right? Like,
Yes.
I thought it worked, and I thought it was affecting the
Yeah.
way it made him seem crazy and pathetic, right?
Yeah.
And so I think maybe that's what the headaches and all that, it makes him sort of beyond just, otherwise he's just a violent nut bar.
Yeah.
It sort of humanizes him, right? In that he has this affliction, and I don't know if he makes him a sympathetic character, but for me, it made him a little more sympathetic. That insanity, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so yeah, without him, like, I can't picture anyone else that you could
No.
you could
It,
put in
it's
there.
it's really a showcase of his what made him great.
And
And
apparently,
then
he hates the movie. Like, he hated this movie because he
really,
hated this image of him that he was trying to get away from.
oh
This gangster image. He wanted to have like kids movies and stuff, and he didn't want to be remembered, and he was, it's this amazing ending,
yeah,
so he's remembered for it, and he really hated the fact that he was remembered for this ending.
didn't he read the script in advance? I mean,
Well, it was kind of like him and his brother had a production company, and they tried to do some movie that like was really boring apparently,
Yeah.
and it just didn't work. And so he had to. Well, I mean, he did win the Oscar for what is it, Yankee Doodle Dandy, which is just a fun song and dance thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that that's his Oscar, but his career he's remembered as this gangster, right?
Yes. Yes.
But he's an amazing song and dance guy. Like he's
Yes.
incredibly physical, like
Yeah.
he's amazing how physical he is.
Yeah.
And
And
so and I think he actually owned a dance company for a while.
oh wow.
Yeah. So it's a pretty interesting story. This guy, like, he worked his way up from nothing and
Yeah.
just working on the stage and working odd jobs all around sets, and finally, actually, in Public Enemy, he was supposed to be the co-star, and they, after some shooting, they said, you need to be the star, and so that was his big
Big break.
breakout role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And at that time he didn't care about being typecast, but then that was sort of all he did.
Yes.
Played those gangsters,
Yeah.
and but he's capable of doing comedy, right? He's
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a movie called 1, 2, 3, which is it's a great film. It's about this business guy in East Berlin, right?
Yeah.
It's hilarious, and it is some of the fastest dialogue, and
Yes.
he makes that film, and it's all comedy, right? Like, does a
Wow.
great job of it, and it's
Oh,
one of
that's
his highest.
awesome.
Actually, this is his highest rated film, right, on IMDb, which is an 8.1. Anything over 8 for a classic movie is,
Yeah.
I mean, anything over 7 is a great film, but like it's the director's top film, right, Raoul
Yeah.
Walsh, and it's, yeah. I mean, for me, it's definitely held the test of time.
Yeah.
I could watch it. It's as exciting as most sort of crime films today, right?
Yeah.
With the psychological element, and yeah, there's really not a point where it drags.
Yeah.
There's I mean, the characters are, you've got the one scheming behind him, his back. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think I kept up with about 80% of it.
Yeah.
you know, so, and audiences back then, though, they may, yeah, that may have been a harder thing for
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
because they, being and watching it once, I had the benefit of being able to rewind it and be like, oh, wait a minute, what, why did he get off that murder charge? And you
Yeah.
can't do that in the theater. So I don't know how much they would have gotten, but I don't know what the reception actually of this movie was back then, how popular it was. I think it
Yeah.
was a pretty big hit
Yeah.
at the time, but I actually I don't know about that. It must have been. Otherwise, he wouldn't have cared about it. It wouldn't have made him this
Yes.
iconic bad guy. So it
Yeah.
must have been pretty big
Yeah.
at the
Now, if
time.
there's anything that you dislike about it, what would it be?
I think the jarring transitions into the police procedural,
Yeah.
even though I kind of liked it, I
Yeah.
think I liked it more as a sort of ironic thing. Like, it was kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
So I think that would be it.
Yeah.
Because yes, I like it, but for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
It's kind of like it makes the movie kind of funny for me,
Yeah.
right? It gives it sort of a, I don't know, like a fun look from today. So yeah, that would be I think the weaker link. But
Yes.
again, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could see that. What about you?
For me, I think I felt like there was a lot of characters that were really underdeveloped. And I think there was some missed opportunities in tying some of those loose ends together. Like the headaches and all that. Like it felt like they were building out a character, but usually if you're introducing an element to that character, you want that to be tied into the story somehow, at least certainly from a modern
Yeah,
storytelling perspective. And so I felt like there was a lot of kind of details and like a lot of kind of weird, like the lengthy description of the Trojan horse story.
yeah,
Was that necessary? Probably not. I mean, the Trojan horse story's been pretty mainstream for at least a few
yeah.
hundred years.
I think back
Um,
then they didn't really trust the audience very much. Like, you do
yeah,
get a lot
maybe.
of that sort of, yeah, where they just assume
Yeah.
they're talking to the dumbest person in
Yeah.
that theater. And yeah, you get that with a bunch of stuff I find in older movies.
Yeah.
Like they have to hit you over the head with something.
Yeah, and it was that kind of disjointedness. I mean, part of it is the just the frenetic pace, which I think saves it because the a lot of the movies really disjointed, like just in terms of motivations. Like he gets away from the cops, they pull him to the drive-in, and then he's like, yeah, I'm going to turn myself in for a 2-year sentence, and then I can, we can, but the cops they didn't catch him. Like they were just
Yeah.
he could have just kept driving. Like,
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah,
problem.
that's right.
So there's a
He,
few things like that I felt like because the pace moved really quickly, you didn't have time to really think them through.
oh, yeah.
And so I mean, it works as a film. I think it was compelling and it was interesting, but I think there's some loose ends that weren't tied up, and I feel like that, like plot wise, it just kind of it had a great momentum to it, but that you know pushed it past its flaws, really. That if
Yes. There's definitely a momentum to it that,
yeah.
and there's the police procedural. So if you're about to think about this, well, now it snaps you into a police
Yeah,
procedural,
yes.
right? And then you're
But even
for
like
that.
the affair with Big Ed and his wife,
Yes.
it's like where'd that come from? And it's resolved really quite quickly and brutally, but it was,
Yes.
it's
And
like,
she's
and then
very
she
quick to
convinces
jump
him that
around.
she wants to come back, and he's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a bit frenetic, and I mean, again, if it didn't have the momentum and James Cagney as the lead, I think it
So
could have been off the rails barely.
did Verna kill Mother?
Yeah, she poisoned her.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did he ever
Yeah,
find that out?
yeah. Do you find it out in the scene where
No, did he
um
find it out? Does he find it out?
no, he never does.
Oh, wow, okay. So he thinks Big Ed killed Ma.
Yeah, or yeah, whatever. Or at
Yeah,
least
okay.
that Big Ed's having an affair with his wife. And so yeah. So that's what I mean. Like there's a lot of things like feel like loose ends that are never really, tied up, but it just keeps moving on past
Yeah,
them.
I don't
So
actually know what happened to Verna at the end. Did he?
she was in the group. I think that everyone died basically in the shootout at the end.
Right. Okay.
Because she was there. So
So she was
yeah,
at the refinery or whatever?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But he
wait,
was
doesn't she offer to make a deal with the cop? Yes, she does. She says, I can get him to come out quietly if you go
yes.
easy on me. And he's like, no, no deal. It's like, wait,
Yeah,
you're going to go shooting up the refinery just out of pique because you don't want to deal with her? It's
yeah,
like, what the heck? Like, yeah,
yeah,
so yeah, that decision there with the cops, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
cops back then, I think, they certainly come across as a bit thick-headed sometimes, but
yeah,
that's a bit extreme to
yeah.
just start shooting away
Yes.
in
Well,
that
there was a
setting.
lot of
Like,
detective work that went into it, but then when
yes,
when it came down to it, it's like, no, we're gonna get
that's
him.
right. All this sort of cerebral stuff, and then it was just like emotion. We're just gonna blast away in a refinery.
Yeah.
But
So
overall, I think, yeah, I would definitely put this in my top 100.
yeah,
Like just even as a sort of in his filmography, I think it's top
yeah,
3 to 5, right? Like I
yeah,
would say Yankee Doodle Dandy, Public Enemy,
yeah,
and there's another couple in there that are, I think, 1, 2, 3, because it's just so different.
yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely put this one in
Yes. Well,
there
this
as
is our
well.
first video, so we're not necessarily going to give a rank yet, but I'd
No,
say like I don't know if it's top
I think ranking it
100.
would be tough because
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I think it gets into my top 100. I don't know where.
yeah. I would say towards the lower end of my top 100, but it could be there. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna build out this list as
I don't
we
know. Would this
go.
be a film noir? I mean, that's a
No, I don't think so. There's no femme fatale. It's a gangster film, but
maybe,
I don't think it's
but he's
noir.
not really a gangster. Like he's sort of an outlaw, right? Like
Yeah.
he's got his gang. He's never really like a Bogart who's often got his office, right? And he's sort
Yes.
of got and Bogart was sort of his bad guy phase. He's always sort of got money,
Yeah.
whereas Cody Jarrett, like they have money, they like have heists, but they never, as far as I recall, ever seem to enjoy this money at all, right? They're
No.
always on the run, they're always in hiding, they're
Yeah.
always in some crappy
Yeah.
hideout, or he's
Yeah.
in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes. And then there's something about like where how he gets rid of the money. Like there's some dude, that fisherman guy, right?
Yes.
Who
Yes.
like
The
I guess
fence.
is fencing, but it's money that they're stealing. So I guess it's he's trading
Yeah.
it for unmarked bills, I think is what
No,
it
they said
is.
he gets rid of it in Europe, but he charges a very high fee to get rid of it in Europe.
But getting rid of what? The money he's
The
getting?
money,
Like so
yeah. So
he's
spending it, so shipping it over to Europe, spending it there, because I mean, this
so he's
is
laundering it basically, right? He's
laundering it. Yeah.
laundering.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So they bring the the bills to him. He ships it over to Europe and pays them a portion of the winnings. But Cody says it's a pretty poor ratio, like 20% of what they give him, they actually get back in clean cash.
Like I found that to come kind of out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, they do mention this guy, but then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's sort of this major thing going on, and then that also kind of goes nowhere.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. That's for me is the downside of the movie. But overall, though, I liked it. I
Oh
think it
yeah,
was fun. It's a great performance by James Cagney, and really everyone in it does great. But obviously, James Cagney is the real star of the show. And I'd recommend to people if you want a really fun, slightly crazy
yeah.
gangster movie, I think this one's a good one.
And it's a great roller coaster ride. It's like a roller coaster ride that's super exciting, but it's got like I don't know some flaws along the visual ride, but it's moving at such a speed,
Yeah.
and you're having fun that you really don't notice it
Yeah.
unless you stop to think.
Yes.
And
Just don't
while
stop
you're
and think.
on the ride, you really you might have a twist where you're like, "Well, where did that come from?"
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
kind of look back, oh, it's too late, right? And
Yeah.
you're just off to the next thrill, and then
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really like just moves you along quickly, and I think
Yeah.
that's that. Yeah, any sort of flaws, I didn't really notice them.
Yeah.
Some changes of direction that were a bit
Yeah.
abrupt, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely recommend it, especially if you want to. He's got a pretty big filmography. If you're like, well, I just want to watch a few of his movies, I would definitely make this one of
Yes.
them. It's
Yeah.
definitely the one that he is remembered. One of the ones he's remembered for. Doesn't want to be
Yeah.
remembered for, right? So it might not be on his recommendation
Yeah.
list, but
Yes.
it's on ours.
Yes. So anyway, this has been the inaugural episode of A Thousand Movies Before You Die. Thanks so much, Tobe. This has been
It's
great.
been a blast.